Recently, I started playing Death's Door. This is a game that is both kind of a puzzle game as well as a combat game where you take over a reaper and you do the work of death by reaping various souls. However, when you go to collect a big soul, it seems to be gone and you have to figure out the mystery of what's going on here. As you go through, you can get various different souls, coins, and other things to level up your character. You can go in and level up your health, your strength, and various other traditional stats from role-playing games. And on top of that, as you go through, you can find various different item pieces that can either upgrade your vitality past maximum or it can upgrade your stamina. You have various weapons that you can acquire and find, however, you predominantly use a red sword. This red sword allows you to do a heavy attack as well as you can roll and then attack, and you can do a standard attack. Beyond that, like I just mentioned, you have a roll that you can do, and your goal is to get through and kill the various different enemies and get as many souls as you possibly can. Every time that you die, you go back to the recent door that you've opened, and the door takes you back to the Hall of Doors, which is why this game's called Death's Doors. Basically, the doors are checkpoints that you can then go through, and you also can unlock shortcuts as you go through the level and complete different sections as well as kill the enemies. You'll need to pick up things like keys, as well as you'll need to utilize these various different pink blocks in order to open various different sections, and there are different bosses that you get to with various movement attacks. The movement attacks are definitely hard to deal with sometimes depending on the enemy, but I would say one of the biggest challenges in this game is when they lock you in a location and then force you to fight a large amount of enemies. Sometimes they'll give you a flower pot that you can plot a flower in, and then you can use that to regenerate your health at some point throughout the battle. However, that's not always the case, and sometimes you just have to tank it with one level of health. You don't get any health beyond that. It's definitely quite frustrating at times. However, it's very satisfying to get past each part considering the difficulty that arises. I like the overall animation style, especially having the black and white Death's Doors kind of area versus the colorful world that you go into. And on top of that, I find that the combat, while being quite simple, is very clean. You also have a bow that you can use for ranged attacks. However, it doesn't necessarily feel all that useful unless you're fighting another enemy with ranged attacks, in which case you can let off some arrows. However, you only get a few before you have to go in and attack again in order to get up your arrows, as it is something that regenerates as you attack with your standard attack. And even just those standard enemies have a lot of different variations. Some enemies will roll at you, while others will just simply run, and others will fly directly at you. I really like the design of everything, making it seem like it flows fairly simply, although I will say one of my main gripes is it feels like you have to go pretty far sometimes to get back to a certain location. However, I find that if you do die and it takes a while to get back to your previous location, it's most likely that you missed a shortcut or something along those lines. I think that their doors could be a little more persistent throughout, and maybe you could have a couple more locations that you can get back to via checkpoint through the doors, because sometimes it does still take a while even with certain shortcuts. However, I do find the entire thing to be quite pleasant to get through, and the animation style keeps me quite engaged throughout. I wish that there was also a little bit more variation on the way that you do combat. I haven't gotten quite that far into the game, considering this is a first impression, so this might change. But again, the bow seems kind of unfeasible a lot of the time, and beyond that, you can use various different things, like I found an umbrella that you can attack with. However, it's less useful than the sword so far, so I'm curious to see what other combat styles will be present. I feel like a parrying mechanism would have been a little interesting, although there aren't any real sword combat enemies beside you, but I feel like having something where a perfect dodge or something like that would have been a cool mechanic as well. Outside of that, I'm definitely excited to continue down the game and see where it goes from here. But what do you guys think? Have you played this game? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Besides that, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. That'll pop up during the outro, and the rest of our links are down in the description too. We have Gamin sessions for gaming content, movie and Smokin sessions for movie content, CrazyRocky for variety content, and the Try Podcast is our podcast channel. Alright guys, I'll see you all in the next one.
Placed out of my hand to the depths of the universe. It's a spell or a chance just to open up a newer curve.